The Alpha's Surprise Twin Heirs. Chapter 7. Talia stirred at the sound of dawn birdsong drifting through the open balcony doors, the soft hush of the estate still cloaked in early morning shadows. She kept her eyes closed a moment longer, savoring the warmth radiating from Aldric's body pressed close to hers. They had returned from their brief but restorative getaway only the previous afternoon, yet the tension and demands of the pack already lingered at the edges of her mind. For a few heartbeats, she allowed the serenity of this private moment to envelop her, focusing on the slow rise and fall of his chest. She let out a content sigh, pressing closer. Aldric's arm tightened around her waist in response. Without opening her eyes, she murmured, "You're awake, aren't you?" His voice came quietly, still husky with traces of sleep. "I've been half awake for a little while. Didn't want to disturb you." He exhaled, and she felt the subtle press of his lips against her hair. "You seemed peaceful." "I was," she whispered, finally letting her eyes flutter open. She turned to face him, brushing her fingers through the tousled strands of his dark hair. The flicker of early sunlight danced across the strong angles of his face, picking out the faint lines of worry near his eyes that never quite disappeared. "How are you feeling?" He was silent for a moment, studying her in the gentle golden light. "There's a part of me that wishes we could have stayed longer in that little cabin," he admitted, voice low. "But another part is relieved to be here, where we can keep an eye on everything we hold dear." He hesitated, pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "Talia, can I tell you something that's been on my mind?" She heard the note of quiet uncertainty in his tone. "Always," she said, raising a hand to his cheek, letting her thumb trace the faint stubble. "Talk to me." He glanced away for a moment as though gathering his thoughts. "There are times I wake up in the night worried about everything. The pack, the twins, whether I'm a good enough alpha or father or mate." He sighed, shaking his head slightly as though embarrassed to admit these doubts. "I spent so many years leading alone, never imagining I could have this. A mate, two extraordinary sons, a future that seems both beautiful and frightening. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if I deserve any of it." Talia felt a pang in her chest. She understood the burden of leadership he carried, the pressure that weighed on him, and how new and raw these vulnerabilities must feel. "Hey," she whispered, gently guiding his gaze back to hers. "You deserve every bit of happiness you've found. You're a wonderful leader, and you'll be an even better father as our children grow. They already adore you, and so do I." A flicker of emotion crossed Aldric's features. He lifted a hand, tangling his fingers in her hair. "Sometimes I look at you and remember the moment we first crossed paths. You were different, quieter, a mystery I couldn't understand. And now, I see this strong Luna, who loves fiercely. I see a mother who nurtures with all her heart. And I think, how could I possibly measure up to that?" She felt tears prick her eyes at the raw tenderness in his voice. "You don't have to measure up, Aldric. We're partners in this. I have my strengths and doubts, just like you, and I promise you, I'm not leaving your side." He closed his eyes for a moment, seeming to let her words settle in. A hint of relief passed over his face. "Thank you, Talia. Sometimes it feels like you're the only one who sees past my alpha exterior." He took a breath, a wistful smile forming. "I'll try to remember what you said on those nights when my mind goes dark." He brushed his lips over hers, a soft, lingering kiss that carried a swirl of gratitude and longing. She melted into it, letting her arms slide up around his neck. The gentle hush of the morning cocooned them, every whisper of fabric and shift of limbs magnified by the intimacy they shared. When he finally drew back, she opened her eyes to see that flicker of devotion shining in his gaze. She placed a palm on his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart beneath her touch. "Never doubt how much I love you," she whispered, "and I promise we'll face every new challenge together." She kissed him again, softly, savoring the warmth of his mouth and the quiet hum of contentment in her chest. Eventually, they rose from the bed. The light outside had brightened, casting a gentle glow across the estate's gardens. Talia dressed quickly, choosing a comfortable dress that allowed her to move around easily. She sensed an undercurrent of anticipation in the air. The pack was always a busy place in the morning, but now that she was back, she knew there would be tasks, messages, and plenty of watchful eyes. They stepped into the corridor hand in hand. Before they reached the nursery, soft laughter echoed from the other side of the hall. Charlotte's voice drifted out, followed by Beth's gentle chuckle. Talia felt a burst of excitement at the thought of seeing the twins after a full night's rest. Inside, they found the two women standing near a broad quilt on the floor, where the twins wriggled about in lively fashion. Their sons kicked their legs, making delighted noises and occasionally flailing little arms at one another as though trying to communicate. Beth greeted them with a bright smile. "Good morning, you two. These little ones are excited already. They've been babbling away since dawn." Charlotte, who sat cross-legged by the quilt, shook her head with fond exasperation. "I think the older twin nearly rolled over completely just now." She paused, looking at the babies with a touch of wonder. And something else happened. Luca was here a moment ago and saw it too. Talia's heart skipped a beat. Aldric shot Charlotte a curious look. "Something else?" Charlotte nodded. "Right." The younger one seemed startled by a sudden noise, and for a moment there was— how do I describe it? It looked like a faint shimmer around him, as though the air thickened or sparkled. Then it vanished. She shrugged, clearly amazed. It might have been a trick of the light, but the timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Aldric knelt by the quilt, gently placing a hand near the younger twin's plump belly. The baby latched onto his thumb with surprising strength, letting out a burst of giggles. A faint sparkle crossed the baby's eyes, as if acknowledging his father's presence. Talia sank down beside Aldric. She studied her sons, feeling an odd swirl of pride and apprehension, so they might be displaying an energy shield or something like it. A form of protection, maybe. Charlotte hummed in agreement. Possibly. Luca said it reminded him of an old story about young wolves who manifested early powers, though that's usually just a legend. Beth, perched on a small stool, gave a thoughtful nod. "I'd say it's more than legend if we're seeing it with our own eyes." She glanced at Talia. "What do you think?" Talia exhaled, reaching to lift the older twin into her arms. He gurgled happily, reaching for her hair. "I think they're full of surprises," she admitted. "I'm not sure if it's connected to their prophecy or if it's just a natural gift. Either way, we'll have to keep a closer eye on them." Aldric's gaze flicked up to hers. "We'll do more than that." He gently ruffled the younger twin's hair, his voice dropping as though in quiet awe. "We'll protect them and teach them. Let's just make sure they're safe and free to grow into these abilities without fear." Talia felt a wave of tenderness that overcame her earlier concerns. "Yes, we will," she murmured. "No matter what." They spent the next hour together, enjoying a light breakfast in the nursery while the babies crawled or flopped about. Luca arrived, confirming what Charlotte had described. He said he had seen a faint shimmer, something almost like a swirling haze around the younger twin's small body. It had vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. Talia and Aldric exchanged tense but determined glances, another sign that their children's futures were bound to something beyond ordinary experiences. Still, Talia found strength in Aldric's presence. The memory of their quiet morning conversation fueled her resolve, reminding her that they faced all challenges side by side. That afternoon, Talia learned of a new development, a ceremonial feast to be held at the estate, meant to celebrate and strengthen alliances with neighboring packs. She stood in the sitting room with Charlotte, who read off a list of expected guests, some of whom had recently negotiated beneficial trade agreements with Aldric's territory. Talia felt a nervous thrill course through her. She had attended pack meetings and gatherings before, but this promised to be a larger, more formal event that would call for her to be at her best as Luna. Charlotte offered a reassuring smile. "You'll do fine, Talia. Everyone's eager to meet you in a more official capacity, especially now that you've settled in. The pack is proud to show off its Luna." Talia glanced over the list, seeing new and familiar names alike. "I just hope I can live up to their expectations," she said with a small laugh. "So many new alliances were made after Stormfang's downfall, and we keep forging more. I feel like I'm learning diplomacy on the fly." "You are," Charlotte said. "But you have a knack for empathy. That alone wins half the battle." The day of the feast arrived with a flurry of activity. Decor was set up across the main courtyard. Long tables were arranged, loaded with fresh platters of meats and cheeses, fruit-laden centerpieces, and polished silverware. Talia oversaw it all with Luca and Beth, noting every detail. By mid-afternoon, guests started arriving from various allied packs, some traveling in carriages, others walking in smaller groups. Each time Talia greeted them, she gave a warm smile, mindful to learn and repeat their names correctly. She took a certain pride in seeing how comfortable people felt in her presence. She also noticed how Aldric watched her from a short distance, his gaze reflecting admiration that made her heart flutter. She kept her composure, turning to greet the next arrival, a Luna, from a smaller territory to the east, a woman called Serena. Serena wore lavish clothing and carried herself with regal confidence. She spoke politely to Talia but seemed more interested in Aldric the moment she spotted him. "Oh, the Alpha King," she said, crossing the courtyard to speak with him directly. Talia followed calmly, listening as Serena praised the estate. Talia felt a prickle of unease at the way the woman's gaze lingered on Aldric's face. She forced a polite smile. Despite her best efforts, a subtle flicker of jealousy twisted in her stomach. Serena's voice carried a gentle purr. "I must commend you, Aldric, on how beautifully you've organized this event. Truly, you have a gift for hospitality." "Thank you," Aldric replied, flicking a brief glance at Talia. "I couldn't have done it without Talia. She's the heart of this pack now," he said, his tone warm but deliberate, as he reached out to place a hand lightly at Talia's back. Serena's lips curved in a faint smile, though Talia detected the coolness in her eyes. "Indeed, Luna Talia is most gracious," she said, turning back with a slight lift of her chin. "I'm sure you are proud to have found someone so unexpectedly special." An odd emphasis on the word unexpectedly made Talia bristle internally. She forced her features to remain serene, reciprocating with a measured nod. "I appreciate your words, Lady Serena. We're glad you could attend." Serena's attention slid back to Aldric, holding his gaze a heartbeat too long. "I do hope we can speak at length," she said lightly. "It's rare I meet an alpha with such presence, and with so many interesting stories to share." Talia carefully took Aldric's arm, guiding him to the next group of arrivals. "If you'll excuse us, we have more guests to greet," she said with a polite smile, though her heart thumped with irritation. As they walked away, Talia leaned slightly closer to Aldric, voice hushed. "I'm probably being foolish, but did you see the way she was looking at you?" Aldric gave her arm a gentle squeeze, leaning in as well. "I did, and you're not foolish." He hesitated, giving Talia a reassuring look. "She doesn't matter. You do." Relief washed through Talia, though she couldn't fully banish the sting of seeing another woman brazenly admire Aldric. She put on a brave face for the rest of the arrivals, greeting each new group with a welcoming smile. Inside, she tried to quell the swirl of possessive tension. When the feast began, Talia circulated among the tables, ensuring guests had what they needed, engaging in friendly conversation. Pack elders who had once viewed her with skepticism now seemed proud to introduce her to visiting alphas and betas. The meal progressed with laughter, speeches to commemorate recent alliances, and various toasts. Talia found herself fielding many questions about how she managed the pack's daily workings, her experiences as a newly awakened wolf, and her role as mother to the twin heirs. She answered each query patiently, her confidence growing with each positive reaction. Eventually, the sun drifted low, painting the horizon in hues of orange and purple. Talia stood near one of the decorative arches, taking a moment to catch her breath. The event had been a success so far, but her heart still raced from the social demands of the day. She noticed Aldric in conversation with a group of allied alphas, Serena among them. The woman stood a little too close, her laughter bright and seemingly directed at Aldric. Talia felt a twinge of jealousy again. She told herself not to let it burrow too deeply, reminding herself that Aldric had chosen her. But the sight of Serena lightly resting a hand on Aldric's arm was enough to make Talia's stomach twist. Charlotte appeared at her side, offering her a goblet of cool water. "You've done brilliantly, Talia, but you look like you're about to storm over there." Talia let out a wry exhale, glancing at her friend. "She's just so blatant, and it's irritating me more than it should." Charlotte patted her arm gently. "Give him a moment, he can handle himself. The more subtle you act, the more gracefully you can handle her." She hesitated, then grinned. "If you really need a break, I'm sure you can whisk him away after this conversation." Talia managed a small laugh. "You're right." She lifted the goblet, taking a careful sip, and forced herself to remain composed. Moments later, Aldric excused himself from the group and moved to Talia's side, offering her an apologetic look. "Sorry, I couldn't get away sooner," he said, placing a warm hand on her waist. She was persistent. Talia's lips twitched into a faint smirk. "I noticed," she said dryly. "Are you free now?" He caught the flicker of jealousy that still glimmered in her eyes, stepping closer so their arms touched. "Completely free," he murmured. "I only have interest in you." He leaned in so only she could hear. "Why don't we slip away for a moment? See if there's anywhere quieter." Her heart leapt at the invitation. She nodded, letting him lead her out of the courtyard and into one of the side corridors that opened onto a small, lantern-lit garden at the far end of the estate. The sounds of music and conversation faded behind them. Once there, they found themselves alone amid climbing roses and a soft stone bench. Talia felt the tension of the evening begin to slide off her shoulders, replaced by a slow ache of wanting to be close to him. Aldric guided her to the bench, sitting so that their legs brushed, the glow of the lanterns reflected in his golden eyes. "You've been incredible tonight," he said, reaching for her hand. "The way you handled each guest, the way you took genuine interest in their concerns. It reminded me how lucky I am to have you as my Luna." She looked down, cheeks warming at the sincerity in his voice. "It was exhausting, but also fulfilling," she admitted softly. "Everyone was so kind, except for, well, you know." He let out a low chuckle. "Serena has a history of flirting with alphas. I've seen her do it at other gatherings. She probably thought I'd be an easy target." He shook his head, then pressed a gentle kiss to Talia's knuckles. "But I have no patience for her type of attention. I never have." A mixture of relief and yearning coursed through Talia's veins. She set her hand against his chest, brushing the smooth fabric of his formal shirt. "I trust you." It was just painful to watch her try so hard. "I know," he whispered, leaning in until his forehead touched hers. "Talia, I'm yours, fully and completely." He threaded his fingers into her hair, his breath warm against her lips. "I chose you, not her. I want you, in every sense." She felt a wave of fierce love surge up, and tears pricked the corners of her eyes. "Then show me," she murmured, letting her mouth find his. The kiss began tenderly, filled with pent-up longing, but it soon deepened. Her hands clutched at the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer. She tasted the faint sweetness of wine on his lips and the comforting warmth that was unmistakably him. He groaned softly, cradling the back of her head as he drew her tight against him. Each gentle press of his lips sent sparks through her, erasing any lingering jealousy or doubt. For long moments, they lost themselves in that closeness, hearts beating in unison. When they finally broke apart, breaths unsteady, Talia found herself staring into his eyes, the flicker of lamplight dancing across his angular features. She lifted a hand to trace the line of his jaw. "Thank you," she whispered, "for being so patient with me, for seeing me even when I can't see myself." Aldric's breath caught. He kissed her fingertips. "I could say the same for you. You give me hope that I'm more than just an alpha bearing the weight of a kingdom." He exhaled, then rose, extending a hand to help her up. "Let's return before anyone suspects we've vanished completely. Then, later tonight, maybe we can continue this conversation under quieter circumstances." She bit her lip, smiling. "I'd like that very much." They made their way back to the courtyard, weaving through the crowd of well-fed and content guests. Talia saw Serena from a distance, but this time the woman simply offered a neutral nod, perhaps realizing that any further attempts would be futile. Talia joined Aldric in bidding the guests good night as the gathering wound down. Many of them congratulated Talia on a successful event, leaving her feeling a sense of triumph in her role as Luna. Once all had departed or found rooms in the estate for the night, Talia and Aldric finally retreated to their chambers. They only lingered briefly, however, because Aldric had promised to help Talia with her shifting skills under the moonlight. She changed out of her formal attire into something more comfortable, excitement mingling with the day's weariness. He waited in the corridor, taking her hand when she emerged. "Ready for a different kind of training?" he teased softly. "Ready," she agreed, linking arms with him. They headed out to the same courtyard where they often trained. The moon hung high, bathing the stones in a silver glow. Talia breathed in the crisp night air, grateful for the calm after the flurry of the feast. She turned to Aldric, letting him guide her into a more open area. He stood behind her first, resting his hands gently on her shoulders. "Close your eyes," he instructed. "Feel your wolf inside. Remember how it feels to let her out freely, with no fear." She inhaled, letting her eyes drift shut. Her mind danced back to the times she had shifted smoothly, how a flicker of warmth would build inside, then wash over her in a wave. She felt it stir now, an ember at the core of her being. Slowly, she let that ember spread until her muscles tingled. With a shudder, she allowed the partial shift, stopping just short of the full transformation. This time, she felt the shift in her eyes, her senses sharpening, her limbs gaining a subtle tension. She opened her eyes to see the courtyard in sharper detail, the edges more distinct. She heard Aldric's breathing, soft and steady. He circled her, a low hum of approval in his voice. "Good. Let's see how you move in this state." He beckoned her to follow him, stepping lightly across the stones. She tried a few paces, surprised at how fluid her body felt. The ground seemed more responsive, her balance steadier. She gave him a small grin. "It feels more natural each time." "That's the point," he said warmly. "If you get comfortable with partial shifts, you'll have better options in any situation, and it helps you trust your instincts without fully losing human awareness." They worked through a series of exercises, some akin to simple martial forms, others more playful, as Aldric occasionally tried to catch her off guard with a lunge or a grab. Talia's heightened reflexes gave her an edge, and she even managed to flip him lightly once, sending him stumbling with a startled laugh. "You're enjoying this," he remarked, regaining his footing and eyeing her with mock accusation. "First you nearly dropped me with a staff, now you're throwing me in front of the moon." "Maybe you should step up your game," she teased, chest heaving as she caught her breath. He surged forward, clasping her wrists, spinning her around until her back pressed against his chest. She felt his breath on her neck, the quick thud of his heart. They stood there, locked in a playful standoff that radiated tension. Slowly, she relaxed, letting him feel she wouldn't resist. He leaned down, placing a soft kiss on her shoulder. "That's quite enough for tonight, I think," he whispered. "Unless you want me to pin you again." Her voice caught at the huskiness in his tone, but she managed a small laugh. "I might, but let's not get carried away out here," she said, turning in his arms to face him. Her eyes lingered on his lips, remembering how sweetly they had kissed in the garden earlier. She felt his hand slide up to her waist. "Talia," he murmured, "I'm proud of you. You realize you've come so far. There was a time when you doubted every step, and now, I see your confidence shining every day." She felt an unexpected tightness in her throat. "Thank you, but it's not just me. You helped me see what I could be, what I could do." His gaze traveled over her face. "No, you did that yourself. I just cleared a little space." They stood for a moment, letting the moonlit hush drape around them. She reached up, skimming her fingers along his jaw, then leaned in for a gentle kiss. It was an offering of gratitude, a wordless promise that no matter how her powers or responsibilities grew, she remained tethered to this man who steadied her. He returned the kiss softly, his breath laced with the lingering scent of night air. She melted against him, wishing the moment could last forever. When they finally pulled apart, the night had deepened. The cold nipped at Talia's cheeks. "Let's head inside," she whispered, already missing the warmth of a fire and the softness of their room. He nodded, linking their hands, and they walked back in comfortable silence. Her mind buzzed with the day's events. The feast, Serena's lingering gaze, the new ability their sons had displayed, the prophecy that loomed over everything. She realized how exhausted she was once they reached their chamber. Aldric helped her slip out of her training clothes, and she changed into a warm nightgown. He banked the fire in the hearth, adding a log that crackled softly. Outside, the moon still glowed, a watchful eye in the sky. She climbed into bed, sighing as he joined her, their legs entwined under the blankets, and she felt an ache of simple contentment. She pressed her palm to his chest, feeling the steady drum of his heart as she drifted on the verge of sleep. She parted her lips to tell him good night, but darkness pulled her under before she could speak. A swirl of images enveloped her, forming into a dream so vivid it felt like reality. She saw her twin sons, tall and strong, standing side by side, under a harsh sun. Two young women stood with them, both bearing an uncanny resemblance to each other, their eyes glowing with a fierce silver light. She heard voices raised in warning, glimpsed shadowy figures in the distance. A sense of urgency flooded her chest, as if their entire future hung on a single moment. The vision shifted. She saw the twins raise their hands, an aura of power crackling around them. A flash of brilliant light. The scene shattered, replaced by blackness that left her gasping for breath. She woke with a start, a small cry escaping her lips. Her entire body trembled with the aftershock of the dream. The room was dim, the fire reduced to embers. Aldric stirred beside her, immediately reaching out. "Talia," he said urgently, voice groggy with sleep. "Talia, what is it?" She clung to his hand, blinking away the lingering image of those two mysterious women. Her heart pounded erratically. I saw something," she managed, voice shakier than she intended. "Another dream or vision, I can't be sure. Our sons were older, standing with two she-wolves who looked almost identical, and there was this moment of power, of danger." She swallowed. It felt so real. Aldric frowned, quickly lighting a small lantern at the bedside. In the warm glow, she saw concern etched in his features. "Slow down. Are you hurt? Did you see anything you can describe?" She took a breath. "I'm not hurt, just shaken. I saw them groan." The two she-wolves looked so strong, so connected to them, but everything felt like it was building toward a conflict. She rubbed her eyes. "It's all jumbled, but it reminds me of the prophecy." He listened intently, quietly stroking her arm. "Talia, we knew this might happen, that these visions would come and go." He hesitated, then lifted her hand to his lips. "You're not alone. We'll figure it out." She nodded, heart still hammering. She was about to speak again when a faint cry came from the adjoining nursery, the soft wail of one of the twins. They both froze. Then Talia slipped out of bed, crossing to check on her sons. Aldric followed close behind. In the low light from the hall, Talia saw a soft luminescence playing across the older twin's bare arm, like a faint glow etched into his skin. Her breath caught. Aldric saw it too, letting out a quiet gasp. The baby squirmed, as if agitated, but the faint glow slowly dissipated, leaving behind no trace except a slight reddening of the skin. Aldric bent, carefully lifting the older twin from his cradle. Talia checked the younger twin. He seemed calm, but she thought she saw a similar mark near his collarbone, quickly fading. She looked up at Aldric, heart pounding all over again. "Did you see that?" "Yes," he muttered, trying to soothe the baby's soft cries. Some sort of symbol, glowing on his skin. Almost runic. Or something ancient. It's gone now. Talia's vision of them older flared back to life in her mind, reminding her of the raw power she had glimpsed. She laid a trembling hand on her son's head, a swirl of fierce protectiveness rising in her chest. "We'll keep them safe," she whispered, feeling the weight of her earlier vow. Aldric cradled the baby closer, letting out a long breath. "We will." He rocked their son gently until the tiny cries subsided. "Talia, do you think this has to do with the prophecy? Or your dream?" She exhaled slowly. "It has to, right? It can't be a coincidence, not when I just saw them with those she-wolves." She met his gaze, searching for reassurance. "I hate feeling so uncertain. Like every day we uncover something new about them that we can't fully explain." He slid an arm around her waist, drawing her into a secure hold with their child resting between them. "Uncertainty is painful," he said gently, "but we're strong enough to handle it." He pressed a soothing kiss to the baby's head, then one to Talia's temple. "That includes you, me, Charlotte, Luca, and the rest of this pack. They're not alone, and neither are we." Her eyes stung with unshed tears. She nodded, leaning her head against Aldric's shoulder, allowing his steady presence to temper her fear. After a moment, she reached into the second cradle, briefly touching the younger twin's small fist. He stirred but did not wake fully. She thought she saw a faint afterglow on his skin, just below the collarbone, but it vanished when her fingertips brushed it. The older twin eventually calmed down enough that Aldric felt comfortable placing him back in his cradle. Talia crouched close, watching the baby's eyelids flutter with slumber, her heart aching with fierce love. She and Aldric returned to their bedchamber, leaving the connecting door open in case the baby stirred again. Once lying down, Talia curled into Aldric's arms, her mind swirling with images of runic glows, the dream, the prophecy. She breathed in the faint scent of him, letting it steady her. "I'm scared," she whispered, voice barely audible in the hush of the room. "So much is happening so fast. I look at them and see innocence and trust, and then I imagine them thrown into this fate that we can't control." Aldric smoothed a hand through her hair, pressing a gentle kiss to her brow. "I'm scared too." He paused, exhaling slowly. "But every time I remember that I have you beside me, I find the strength to face it all. We'll guide them, protect them, raise them to handle the destiny the prophecy talks about. Even if it seems impossible, we'll do it because we love them more than anything." She nestled closer, letting her hand rest against his chest. In the dim flicker of the dying fire, she could make out the protective set of his features. She felt a swell of warmth. "I love you," she breathed, letting her lips brush his cheek. He turned, capturing her mouth in a tender kiss. "I love you too, Talia. And together, we're enough." They shared a quiet moment of closeness, letting the tension slip away. Outside, the moon hung low, preparing to give way to the first light of dawn. Talia noticed the gradual softening of the shadows on the walls, and she recalled how earlier in the night, she and Aldric had teased and sparred under that same moon. Now, as the embers in the hearth faded, they found solace in each other's arms. Her eyes drifted shut as she replayed the day's events, from the jealousy sparked by Serena's interest, to the training in the courtyard, to the unnerving vision and the twins' strange, glowing marks. A swirl of emotions pressed at her heart, but above all she felt a deep sense of unity. Aldric's heartbeat thudded steadily beneath her ear, and she let it lull her away from the weight of her fears. In the last moments before sleep overcame her, she whispered, "They have us, and this pack. That has to be enough. We'll find a way through." "Yes, my Luna," Aldric murmured, his breath warming her hair. "We will." She let those words, echoing with unwavering devotion, carry her into a fitful but comforting rest. Whatever the future held, from the intensifying prophecy to the unspoken threats lurking at their borders, Talia knew she was not alone. Aldric would be at her side, and together, they would guard their sons with every shred of courage they possessed. In the hush of that final heartbeat before slumber, she felt a certainty that their shared love, passionate, steadfast, and unyielding, would light a path through whatever darkness lay ahead.